Korea collapsed. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. But first, for the past few days, Michael Cohen has been a fixture in Washington, shuttling between the House and Senate while giving Congress an up-close look at his decade working at the top of the Trump empire. And today, that all comes to an end after Cohen finishes testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. And while he may be sitting there behind closed doors today, Cohen is clearly still top of mind for his former boss, who weighed in on the spectacle from thousands of miles away at his summit in Vietnam with Kim Jong-un.
He lied a lot, but it was very interesting because he didn't lie about one thing. He said no collusion with the Russian hoax. And I said, I wonder why he didn't just lie about that too, like he did about everything else. I mean, he lied about so many different things, and I was actually impressed that he didn't say, well, I think there was collusion for this reason or that. He didn't say that. He said no collusion, and I was, a little impressed by that.
Joseph Moreno is a former federal prosecutor. Joe, good to have you on. Let's just dive right in here. CNN has learned that multiple Hill committees will split up the various allegations from Cohen, including inflating the president's net worth. And Cohen also said Trump won't release his tax returns because he's afraid of an audit and possible penalties. But candidate Trump claimed that he was under audit, saying that that is why he couldn't give up the documents. So here's the question. In your mind, what are the main areas of exposure that the president now faces?
So, Brooke, there's so much to unpack, right, from yesterday. But number one, it's the campaign finance angle. This is no longer a hypothetical, right? Michael Cohen is going to jail in 2 months, in part because he committed campaign finance fraud. He directly implicated the president in that criminal behavior. And what we heard yesterday was further evidence, not hypotheticals, but evidence in terms of testimony and documentation that the president personally directed him to do this and even signed one of the checks. So that, to me, is the most imminent of the many threats that are now swirling around this president.
I was reading this morning, one legal analyst said essentially that there was no one smoking gun on anything related to Russia that this person heard from Cohen. But when you look at all of it together, might it be used, the whole thread, to charge someone, the president, with being a co-conspirator?
Certainly a possibility. So, Brooke, if there's any silver lining in yesterday, it's what President Trump just picked up on, right? Which is that Michael Cohen could not help connect the dots with respect to Russia collusion, which is a very general term that doesn't even have its own legal significance. That's all I saw as far as a silver lining, though. I don't see how any objective legal mind could have watched what happened yesterday and not come away saying this was a really bad day for the president. The only question is how bad.
Right. Who may know is a name who kept coming up, who is Alan Weisselberg, the CFO of the Trump Organization, who was granted immunity in the SDNY probe into Cohen last fall. And Cohen was telling investigators that Weisselberg was involved in discussions on how much to pay the hush money and to reimburse him. So here is Chairman Cummings. This is what he said after the hearing about that.
Mr. Chairman, what do you think? Weisselberg, Donald Trump Jr. in order to investigate the hush money payments, Weisselberg, Donald Trump Jr. Do you need to talk to them?
We probably will. There are certain areas we've got to be careful with because special counsel in Southern District of New York and others have basically said that there are things that they are looking into. There are a number of areas that we couldn't even get into and didn't get into that they're looking into. This is I think that there are still a number of shoes to drop.
Still a number of shoes to drop as part of that, Joe. I mean, is the money trail the key here?
Yeah, I mean, and this is exactly what the prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, right, where you're sitting, they're really good at this. I mean, they have brought major white-collar prosecutions, whether it's organized crime or narcotics or Wall Street crimes. They're really good at following the money. They were like bred for this. So that is definitely the biggest concern here. And I've said this for a long time. When Michael Cohen's office was raided last year, that was the biggest danger of this presidency because there's no telling where the evidence could take them.
In the midst of all of the mudslinging and the partisan finger-pointing from yesterday, there were some lawmakers who actually focused on why Cohen said he came before Congress, and one of them was New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
So, Joe Moreno, that was just a sliver of what the congresswoman put forth in all these, questions. No grandstanding, no long speeches, just like this laser focus on Trump's finances and laying the groundwork for where this committee goes next. How effective do you think she was in that hearing yesterday? Do you think her colleagues should take notes?
Well, think about some of these high-profile congressional hearings we've seen this past year, right? Peter Strzok, Matt Whitaker. We've seen how difficult it can be to use your 5 minutes effectively. And congresspeople often fall into one of two traps. Either one, they spend the entire 5 minutes making speeches. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but they lose their opportunity. The second problem is they ask questions, but they're not good questions. They don't ask follow-ups. They don't really lay the predicate for any kind of future action. The congresswoman did not fall into either one of those traps. And for a freshman, that's really impressive, right? She got to the point. She laid the predicate for future action. She said, who should we talk to? What should we look at, and what would be productive in Congress's investigation further? And she got some good information, which she can now take and say, this is the basis for why we should take further actions, whether it's with the bank fraud allegations, about possibly fraudulent bank statements, whether it's the tax returns, whatever else. So she did a really nice job. Whoever prepped her did a fantastic job.
Joseph Moreno, good to see you. Thank you very much on all of that. Let's talk about the Democrat who oversaw Cohen's hearing, House Oversight Chairman Elijah Cummings. He said today that if Cohen mentioned your name, expect to hear from his committee one way or another. And some of the names that Cohen mentioned, names from Trump's inner circle, we have not heard before. CNN politics reporter and editor-at-large Chris Cillizza is with me. And Chris, Michael Cohen may have been, the star of the hearing, so to speak, but there were many names he brought up. So who did he talk about?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Just when you thought you knew all the players in this massive game, now there's more. So let's go through. Some we heard before, some we hadn't. Okay, let's go through. Alan Weisselberg is a name we have heard before. He was granted immunity by the Southern District of New York to talk about Cohen and the laws that Cohen broke. So that was in relation to Cohen. Alan Weisselberg, interesting guy, started working for Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father. Is in charge not just of Trump Inc.'s finances, but also Donald Trump's personal finances. So this might be the key player here, but a great immunity for Cohen, but nothing more. Okay, Eric, Ivanka, Don Jr., obviously we know these people, but what we learned from Cohen yesterday was that these two in particular, the eldest, it's a great picture of Don Jr., the eldest son and eldest daughter of Donald Trump, were the ones that were Cohen's contact on this Trump Tower Moscow project, that he met with them 10 times to brief them on where we were. So intimately involved. Obviously, we know these two, Eric and Don Jr., run the Trump Organization. Ivanka, obviously, a senior official in the White House. Okay, moving on. Rona Graff. So this is someone who we know of. She even kind of sort of played a little bit of a role in The Apprentice, the TV Apprentice. This is sort of the gatekeeper to Donald Trump. Been with him for a very long time. Secretary, personal assistant, the person that you don't get to Donald Trump unless you go through her. So again, she and Weisselberg, we kind of had heard of them, but not all that much, and Cohen mentioned them, which to your point on Elijah Cummings, worrisome. Okay, now to my favorite two, okay, down here. Ron Lieberman and Matthew Calamari. Now, both of them are sort of senior executives in the Trump Organization with very vague titles. I want to focus on my guy, Matthew Calamari. When Cohen mentioned Calamari's name, the internet went insane because they assumed that was a made-up name. Like, who could possibly be named Matthew Calamari? He's just making up a name for, like, an extra in The Sopranos. No! Calamari exists in real life. He was Trump's chauffeur and bodyguard, and like many people in that organization, rose up through the ranks. Why? Because he was unflinchingly loyal to one person, Donald Trump. So we're going to get more. We're already familiar with this group. Get familiar with Weisselberg, although I don't know if he'll talk. Same thing with Rona. I don't know that she'll talk. These two guys are sort of interesting. Both of them close to Trump for an extended period of time, and we really haven't heard much about either of them just yet. Back to you, Brooke.
Matthew Calamari, yes. That is his name. Chris Cillizza, thank you very much. So you just heard Chris, run through those some of those names. Coming up next, we'll talk to someone with inside knowledge about the Trump Organization, a woman who was a former executive there and worked with the likes of Weisselberg. Plus, the other major story today, no deal. President Trump walking away from the Kim Jong-un talks, and the North Koreans moments ago holding a rare news conference, hear what they say. And one former Republican senator calls it reprehensible, the president giving Kim cover on the death of an American citizen. You're watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin. As you were watching Michael Cohen's testimony, it was the Trump executive name you could not miss.
Alan Weisselberg. Alan Weisselberg. In the office with me was Alan Weisselberg. So Alan Weisselberg is the chief financial officer.
Alan Weisselberg, as you just heard Cohen there mention, is the top money man within the Trump organization. He handles not only the company's finances, but he oversaw the president's personal transactions like his checks, his tax refunds. Weisselberg, in fact, signed one of the checks, the bottom signature seen here, that Cohen presented as proof that Trump reimbursed him for hush money Cohen paid to silence a story alleging an extramarital affair with Trump. Federal prosecutors have given Weisselberg limited immunity in the hush money case, but what does that mean for Weisselberg's role regarding the other allegations Cohen brought up, i.e. Trump misusing his charity or filing false information to avoid taxes? All questions certainly people will be exploring. So for some insight, Barbara Rez is back. She wrote All Alone on the 68th Floor, How One Woman Changed the Face of Construction. Rez was an executive vice president at the Trump Organization, working for Donald Trump for 18 years.
Yeah, well, on and off, yeah.
On and off for 18 years. It's great to have you back.
Thank you.
Let's just run through some of these names. We just talked about Alan Weisselberg, who you overlapped with for
Yes.
a number of years. At the time, he wasn't the big kahuna, so to speak.
No.
He was, what was he
He
serving?
was the guy. Well, he came from Brooklyn, and you know he did the billing and the paying the bills. I mean, basically those two functions, like a chief accountant. And basically, I think that's what he did at Trump Tower for the when he first moved over there. And he moved over there in the period between '84 and '87 when I was gone. I left and came back. So
Anything about him stand out? I mean, obviously the now president must have trusted him enough to
Yes,
give him quite the
you know,
promotion.
well, like I said, he went back to Fred and Brooklyn. He was not in the inner circle at that time, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He was the kind of guy that would be called into Donald's office and he would say, "Yes, Mr. Trump." You know, that when we walk on, "Yeah, Donald." You know,
He
that
was a
kind of
Mr.
thing.
Trump.
He was a Mr. Trump guy, but it looks like that changed.
That changed, and it also changed with Matthew Calamari, who I just also want to ask you about. I mean, all the color on all these different people that you worked with. So this guy Matthew Calamari, who Chris Elizabeth was just talking about, and yes, that is his real name, who you used to call
the Big Squid.
The Big Squid, is now the COO of
Correct.
Trump Org,
Yes.
and this is also a name that we heard from Cohen. And at the time, he was brought in as
He was working at the Open on like a 4-day...
the U.S. Open.
U.S. Open. Donald was there in the stands, and he saw this big guy come and chase some kids that were sitting in seats they didn't belong in and pulled them out by the scruff of their neck. And Donald was impressed by that. So we went over to him and got his number. And he came in the next day or the day after and told me, "Call this guy. I want to put him on, you know, on Trump Tower on the staff in charge of security." I said, "Donald, I don't need somebody like that. And, you know, he's not, you know, he just got out of college. Hire him. He's a great guy." So I did. I put him on the staff of the general contractor, and he worked for me, and he did a good job. He rose to the occasion. I mean, you know, he made sure that people were not stealing things to the extent that you can on a construction job.
All goes back to loyalty, doesn't it? With,
Well, yeah, eventually it does, yeah. And then he ended up being Trump's bodyguard.
and then now
Well, he went through a few iterations, but now he's COO.
COO. What about Michael Cohen said nothing happens in Trump world without Trump knowing about it, and he brought some of these checks. Michael Cohen brought some of these checks, right, to the Hill, including checks from the president himself after he had become the president, paying him back for the hush money. And he also said one of the checks was made out in Don Jr.'s name. What do you think of that? And how
You know,
close-
I don't know what to make of John Dunn Jr., but as far as Trump paying his own checks, for something important like that, I think even if he said you could sign it, I think they'd want him to sign it just so that they would have his name on it, because that was a big deal. But yeah, in Trump world, Trump knew everything. Nothing went on without him. That's why when this meeting in Trump Tower with the Russians came up, they asked me, is it possible that Donald didn't know? I said, no, that's not possible. Everybody reported to Donald, even the highest person, and I don't think Don Jr. was in that, you know, echelon.
Cohen also said that Trump threatened people hundreds of times. Were you ever threatened?
Cohen actually called me right after I wrote an op-ed piece in the Daily News. I had just started out, and it was not a bad piece. It was kind of nice, I mean, actually. And he started talking words like defamation and libel, and, you know, I said, gee, Michael, I got to go. I have people here, and I'll call you back.
Michael Cohen was the one doing the threat.
Yeah, Cohen, yeah. Now, as far as Trump threatening, I mean, you know, the funny story is he used to keep a picture of Roy Cohen in his desk drawer, and when we'd have meetings with contractors that wanted to get their final payments, Trump would say, I'm not going to pay you, I'm going to sue you, and here's my lawyer, and he'd bring up, but threatening to sue was a definitely big deal. He threatened to sue everybody.
How about this whole conversation that's been going on over whether or not Donald Trump is racist? Cohen said he is, recalling an incident when Obama was president in which Trump said black people would never vote for him because, the quote, they were too stupid. Cohen pointed out that there are no black executives at the Trump organization. Is Donald, you've known Donald Trump off and on for years and years. What's true?
It's hard for me to say he's racist and then admit that I worked for him for all that time. I mean, it was a different period of time, and words like the N-word were used frequently. They aren't ever used now.
By Donald Trump himself?
Well, I don't remember, to be honest. I won't say that he did because I don't remember. I remember hearing jokes. There were always black jokes going back and forth, and he told them too. You know the expression, once you go black, you never go back? First time in my life I heard it. It was Donald that said it, and in a joking way. So, I mean, there was certainly a lightheartedness about not only black people, but Jews and things like that. But I remember we were picketed by...
So, hang on. I'm just still letting that sit for a second. So no one in the room, when Donald Trump or others would make these inappropriate jokes, would say, sir, not appropriate.
People didn't do it at that time. Everybody joked. And people, I mean, I'm going to be honest about it. People left it. This was 1981, 82, sure. 83. And that's almost 40 years ago. And people sort of left. They left at Polish jokes. And by the way, they weren't as mean intended back then. It was more or less kind of like racism was like accepted. It wasn't like, oh, I hate black people. It's just this is the way people are and this is the way we talk.
Which we all know it is never accepted, but you are full of stories
yes,
from all of those years. Barbara Rez with Donald Trump. Wow. Thank you, Barbara Rez, very much.
My pleasure.
President Trump, once again, under fire for embracing a brutal dictator. Kim Jong-un, Erdogan, Putin, the Saudi Crown Prince, some of the names of strongmen and notorious leaders the president has praised. A Republican senator joins me live. And a heated clash over allegations of racism during that Michael Cohen hearing. This is what we were just talking about, when a Republican used a black woman to stand up and defend the president. But there are some past remarks from that particular congressman that is fueling the flames. We'll be right back. The president is making a refueling stop at an Air Force base in Alaska after abruptly cutting his critical meeting with Kim Jong-un short. President Trump says talks fell through after the North Korean leader insisted the United States lift all sanctions. But that's actually not the only big headline coming out of his trip to Vietnam. I'm going to give you two words. Otto Warmbier, the American college student who was imprisoned in North Korea for more than a year and returned home in a coma and died days later. Warmbier's parents were guests of the president at his 2018 State of the Union address.
You are powerful witnesses to a menace that threatens our world, and your strength truly inspires us all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Tonight we pledge to honor Otto's memory with total American resolve. We need only look at the depraved character of the North Korean regime to understand the nature of the nuclear threat it could pose to America and to our allies.
But when the president came face-to-face with Kim Jong-un in Vietnam, he gave him a pass, even defending the dictator.
He felt badly about it. I did speak to him. He felt very badly. He knew the case very well, but he knew it later. And, you know, you got a lot of people, a big country, a lot of people. And in those prisons and those camps, you have a lot of people. And some really bad things happened to Otto. Some really, really bad things.
Why are you?
But he tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word.
Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana is with me now. Senator, welcome back.
Thanks, Brooke.
Otto Warmbier, sir, he was a 22-year-old American citizen. How do you defend that comment from President Trump?
I don't know whether Kim Jong-un knew or not. I don't know that it matters in this sense. Kim is responsible for North Korea. He's responsible for the prison system. He's responsible for the inhumanity in the prison system. Whether he knew or not, to me, it'd be interesting to know. I don't know how we'll ever know, but he's responsible. And it's just that simple. He is a barbaric authoritarian. We have given him here an opportunity to come into the 21st century if he'll give up his nuclear weapons. And I hope the gentleman, who I've never met, has sense enough to accept that opportunity, if not for himself and his family, for his people.
Now, whether he knows this or not, Senator, this isn't the first time that President Trump has a history of believing murderous dictators. Roll the tape.
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. I hate the crime. I hate what's done. I hate the cover-up. And I will tell you this. The Crown Prince hates it more than I do. And they have vehemently denied it. The CIA points it both ways. And as I said, maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
Senator Kennedy, do you support this kind of backing the president gives these thugs, as you call them?
Well, I wasn't there. When you meet with someone and you try to assess whether they're telling you their truth or not, you know, there's several things you can do. You judge demeanor, you judge credibility, you look at corroboration. I wasn't there. I don't think any of us will ever know whether.
But we don't. Do we need to be there to know what Kim Jong-un and Putin and Duterte and MBS, listen to the CIA, what they are capable of? Do we need to be there?
No, not to know what they're capable of. But the question, Brooke, was: is Kim lying to the president? And I don't know. I don't know. I don't think.
No. The question, Senator Kennedy, is why does the president keep supporting these murderous men?
Well, I don't know. You'll have to answer or ask him that question to get your answer. I'm just saying it's an interesting discussion. I don't know how we'll ever resolve it, but to me, Kim is responsible anyway, just as Vladimir Putin is responsible for the things that his government does, as is the Ayatollah in Iran.
So why on earth is the President of the United States not defending an American citizen or his family?
You'll have to ask him that, Brooke. I wasn't there. I have heard him defend
Well, Mr.
America
Trump, if you're watching, come on to CNN.
Maybe he'll call in.
I think there's a better chance of a lot of things. But, Mr. Trump, call us. You know the number. Speaking of MBS, you are very vocal about Saudi Arabia, and just this week the Senate is, pushing the Trump administration for a complete report on Jamal Khashoggi's murder. At the same time, the president's own son-in-law was in Saudi Arabia meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, the man the CIA says ordered the killing. Any thoughts on that, Senator Kennedy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to play a tape. Well, Brooke, one of the hardest things that a president, any president, has to do is deal with an authoritarian government that doesn't share American values, but whose interests are important to us. And if we just refuse to deal with any country that doesn't share our Western values, the world would be a more dangerous place. Now, I've been very critical of the prince. Whether he knew it or not, he's responsible. Right. But I've also said we shouldn't sever ties completely with Saudi Arabia because it's in our interest, the security interest of the Middle East and Israel and the United States, to have some sort of dialogue. I don't know how Saudi Arabia is a major player in the Middle East. I don't know how you can deal with the problems in the Middle East without talking to Saudi Arabia, and whether we like it or not, Prince Mohammed is in charge.
Right. Let me ask you about, switching gears,
Sure.
Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, the president's former attorney, he's been in his third congressional hearing today. So let me just start with you, Senator, on those hush money payments to those women. Cohen came to Capitol Hill yesterday with those checks paying him back, checks signed by President Trump, right? So after he took office. Unlike your House colleagues on that committee, are you bothered by that?
Well, you know, I've been asked repeatedly, Brooke, since that happened, and I think you're asking the same thing. You know, if Mr. Cohen's testimony is true, does that raise his problems with the president? Well, you know, that's like asking, if I murder somebody, am I a murderer? I am a murderer if I murder somebody. And I don't know whether Mr. Cohen is telling the truth or not. I have to let me just finish my thought. I have to look at his credibility. I mean, we know that in the past he's been convicted. He's lied to the Federal Elections Commission. He's lied to Congress. He's lied to banks when he borrowed money. He lied to the IRS in 2012
and he's going to prison.
2013, and he's going to prison.
Right. But let me, can I, if I may, let me interject.
Sure.
You tell me with a straight face that let's flip the script and say, President Hillary Clinton, if there were a President Hillary Clinton and she secretly conspired with her personal lawyer to pay off people to keep quiet about her affairs in order to keep it secret from the American people before a presidential election, and also detailed bank and tax fraud in her foundation, the Republicans, you tell me, Senator Kennedy, the Republicans wouldn't want to talk to her lawyer? Really?
No, if the shoe were on the other foot and I were asked to judge the veracity of a witness against a President Clinton, as I am with respect to President Trump, I would just say, look, let me look at corroboration, but let me look at their background, their character. It's just a fact, Brooke. Mr. Cohen is a convicted liar. To me,
you'd be asking those questions.
And
you'd be asking those questions.
Sure, I would. But I think he's an angry man. He's bitter. My son might say, I'm not saying he's a bunny boiler, but he's a little unbalanced. And
a bunny boiler? You always bring some new vocabulary, Senator, to the conversation.
But take a more commonsensical approach. You know, I asked myself, would I take his check? And the answer is probably not. And I don't think you would, or I don't think.
But can you tell me why not a single Republican defended the substance of the allegations regarding the president? They ripped into him, liar, liar, pants on fire. Where was the defense of the president?
Well, the guy doesn't have a good background for veracity, Brooke.
That's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about the president and the accusations.
He did talk. Mr. Cohen has presented all that information to the special counsel. Well, I assume he's going to look at it. But I'll bet you one thing.
His signature was on the check, Senator Kennedy.
Right, and the issue is that a violation of the federal campaign finance laws? And you can argue that one round or flat. There are good arguments on both sides. I happen to believe it isn't a violation of the campaign finance laws, but a lawyer smarter than me can probably make an argument. Just because I don't think you have to prove intent, and I don't think you can prove mens rea in a case like that. And I think the federal election statutes are primarily meant to be civil. That doesn't mean that you can't have a criminal violation of the FEC provisions, but that's just my personal opinion. But I'll tell you this: if the special counsel thinks that anybody violated the FEC laws in a criminal way, I suspect he'll bring an indictment. But I'll also make this prediction: he's not going to do it solely on the testimony of Mr. Cohen and have Mr. Cohen as his only witness.
Of course.
For obvious reasons.
To your point about corroborations. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Senator John Kennedy, a pleasure. Come back.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you. Coming up, a Republican lawmaker attempts to prove Trump is not a racist, sparking this bitter back and forth.
The fact that someone would actually use a prop, a black woman, in this chamber, in this committee, is alone racist in itself.
Mr. Chairman.
As those headlines were coming fast and furious out of that Michael Cohen hearing, something else extraordinary happened on Capitol Hill. In an effort to make the point that there is no way President Trump can be racist, Republican Congressman Mark Meadows of North Carolina, a Trump ally, had a woman by the name of Lynn Patton take the stage. Patton is an African-American associate of the Trump family who now works for HUD, that's the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And Congressman Meadows went on to say this about her. As a daughter of a man born in Birmingham, Alabama, that there is no way she would work for an individual who was racist. Now, several of Meadows' Democratic colleagues took him to task throughout the rest of the hearing. Congresswomen Brenda Lawrence and Ayanna Pressley called him out, but it was Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib who went the farthest.
Just because someone has a person of color, a black person working for them, does not mean they aren't racist. And it is insensitive that some would even say it's the fact that someone would actually use a prop, a black woman, in this chamber, in this committee, is alone racist in itself.
I ask that her words, when she's referring to an individual member of this body, be taken down and stricken from the record. I'm sure she didn't intend to do this, but if anyone knows my record as it relates, it should be you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to...
Hold on.
I want the words read back.
No.
I've defended you about with false accusations.
Mr. Meadows, I'm the chair.
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you. Right. I will clear this up.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing more personal to me than my relationship. My nieces and nephews are people of color. Not many people know that. You know that, Mr. Chairman. And to indicate that I asked someone who is a personal friend of the Trump family, who has worked for him, who knows this particular individual, that she's coming in to be a prop, it's racist to suggest that I asked her to come in here for that reason.